All right, let's talk about Google's new AI, Gemini 3. It's just dropped, and people are saying it might be the biggest thing to happen this year. So, what's the deal? Is it really that good? We're going to break it down and see what this thing can actually do.
And get this, the praise is coming from inside Google itself. Logan Kilpatrick, who's on the team that built Gemini 3, calls it the most powerful vibe coding tool I have ever seen. I mean, that's a huge claim, right? So let's dig in and see if the power is real.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First up, we're going to see if the numbers actually back up the hype. Then we'll look at how it can be your personal AI co-creator, even building a whole game from a simple sentence. After that, we'll dive into a wild, kind of hidden superpower it has with video. And finally, we'll connect the dots and talk about how this is about to change, well, pretty much everything.
All right, Section 1. Is Gemini 3 really a champion, or is this just another case of tech hype? You know how it is. So let's ignore the marketing spin for a second and just look at the cold, hard data.
And wow, right off the bat, the lead is pretty undeniable. We're looking at a test that's basically PhD-level science and reasoning questions. Super tough stuff. And Gemini 3 isn't just edging out the competition, it's blowing past it. This isn't a small step, it's a huge leap in its brain power for really complex problems.
And then there's this number 1 million. That's its token context window. Now, if you're not a super AI nerd, just think of this as the AI's short-term memory. Most other models have a memory that's like 4 times smaller. So what does this mean? It means Gemini can hold a way longer and more complex conversation with you. It won't forget what we were talking about 5 minutes ago, which is honestly a game changer.
Okay, so the numbers are impressive, but what can you do with all that power? This is where it gets really cool. We're moving into this era of what people are calling vibe coding. Basically, you just describe the vibe of what you want, you just talk to it, and the AI builds a real working tool for you, right there. This isn't just for developers anymore. This changes who gets to be a creator.
Check this out. Someone described a pretty complicated mortgage calculator they needed for an investment property. And boom, Gemini didn't just spit out some numbers. It built a whole interactive dashboard. You've got sliders you can play with for things like vacancy rates, and it can even generate a full financial report. It built a mini app from a paragraph of text. And it's not just for finance tools. Here's a great business example. A startup founder was making a meditation app for men and needed to find their first customers. They just asked Gemini, and look what it did. It built a customer intelligence report. It went out, scanned online forums to find what men were actually complaining about. You know, things like, "My mind wanders a lot." And it even flagged phrases that showed they were ready to buy something. It's literally like having an entire market research team at your fingertips 24/7.
Okay, business tools are one thing, but what if we push the limits? I mean, really push them. Can it build something fun, something complex and creative? What about a whole video game?
And the answer is yes. This is just wild. Somebody gave it a single prompt, build a minimal Minecraft-like world. And it did. It created a playable 3D-ish world that runs right in your web browser. You can move around, you can place blocks, you can remove them, and it did all of this in one shot. It literally coded a game from scratch based on one sentence.
But it's not just about getting it right the first time. It's about being able to fix things, to iterate. So here's another example. It created a clone of the game Vampire Survivors, but the first try was a little off. The game was too fast, you leveled up too quickly. So the user just told it that, in plain English. Hey, this game is too fast. And Gemini went back, understood the feedback, and rebalanced the entire game. You're not just creating software by talking, you're debugging it by talking. That's a whole new level.
Okay, so we've seen it can reason and it can code. But here's the superpower that I think not enough people are talking about yet. It's Gemini's absolutely incredible ability to understand video. And I don't mean just transcribing it. I mean it watches and understands the context, the nuance, everything. So, for instance, it watched a video podcast and basically became a personal coach for the host. At one point, a guest showed this really complex diagram on screen. Gemini immediately flagged it, saying, "Hey, your audio-only listeners are totally lost right now. You need to describe what you're showing them." That's not just observation. That's specific, actionable feedback that shows it gets the art of podcasting.
And it gets smarter. It also put on its social media manager hat. After watching that same podcast, it pulled out this one specific quote, this spicy take, and said, this is the clip you should use for social media. It's not just understanding the words, it's understanding what makes people click and share. It gets culture.
But the visual analysis goes even deeper than that. This is my favorite example. It analyzed an Ed Sheeran ad for ketchup. And it didn't just say, oh, there's a ketchup bottle. No, it found the single most compelling frame in the entire ad and broke down why it worked. It talked about color theory, how the bright red bottle pops against the dark, fancy restaurant. It talked about the contrast between a cheap plastic bottle and, crystal chandeliers. That's not just an AI, that's a creative director.
So, let's recap. We have an AI that can think like a PhD, code like a senior developer, and critique art like a creative director. That's a lot. So the big question is, what happens when you unleash that kind of power on the internet as we know it?
Well, the first and maybe biggest change is coming for something you probably use every single day: Google Search. This technology is about to completely rewrite the rules of how we find information online.
And it all comes down to this idea called generative UI. Forget just getting a list of 10 blue links. The new idea is that when you ask a question, the AI builds you a custom, interactive little app right there on the spot to give you the answer.
Think about that for a second. The old way, you get a list of links, and you have to click away to find your answer. The new way, powered by this technology, the answer is the experience. The search page itself becomes a little piece of software, custom built just for you right in that moment.
So what's the bottom line here? What are the big takeaways? First, we're looking at the beginning of personal software, little apps you can create for one specific task and then just throw away. Second, interfaces are no longer static. They're going to build and rebuild themselves around what you need in real time. But the biggest shift of all is this: AI is no longer just a tool you use, it's becoming a true creative partner.
And that really leaves us with one final, exciting question for you. We've seen that you can create entire games, dashboards, and tools just by talking. So, if you could create any piece of software just by asking for it, what would you build first?